Hi, and welcome to Reid Beside You. My name is Sherry Harlan Davis, and I'm the program host for Reid Beside You. And today, we're going to learn all about vaping. And today, our guests are Candace Hunt, who is the Tobacco Cessation and Prevention Coordinator at Reid Health, and Deanna Raper, who is a clinical educator as well as a respiratory therapist. Welcome to both of you.
Welcome.
And before we get started, we always like to tell our audience a little bit about how long have you been with Reid? And Deanna, I know you're the pro here.
Yes. I have been at Reid for, in January, will be 17 years. My history is respiratory therapist. Come March, I'll be a respiratory therapist for 32 years. I've worked with newborns all the way up to geriatric patients and anything in between. I always tell my students my oldest patient was 106 years old.
Wow.
So I've been in respiratory for quite some time, so I've seen a lot of things over the years.
Okay, and Candace?
I began my career at Reid in 2014. I've held several different positions throughout the organization, and then currently I'm in the wellness department doing tobacco prevention.
Well, I know that both of you are sought after with vaping in the news and to get the education out to the community. So first we were hearing so much about e-cigarettes. So can you tell me the difference between e-cigarettes first? What is an e-cigarette?
An e-cigarette is an electronic device that usually is battery operated. A lot of times people use them to inhale nicotine. And I think that it's really important to highlight that the e-cigarette category does include the Juul. A lot of people don't think that it does, but the Juul actually accounts for 68% of the market share of e-cigarettes within the last 2 years.
And so how's that differ from vaping?
Vaping is the act of just inhaling and exhaling an aerosol. And a lot of times with your e-cigarettes, the nicotine and what's popular, I think, with the kids is the flavoring that you can get in your vaping sticks. It kind of simulates the smoking. You're just breathing in and out an aerosol. And it is generated either by an e-cigarette or a device similar to an e-cigarette.
Now, when we're seeing that, what are some of the risks? We're starting to see a lot of risk or different news articles. Mm-hmm. So what do you see from a medical standpoint?
Well, from what I've seen over the years of just even with cigarette smoking, the nicotine and the tobacco use, it does cause damage to your airways. I think with the e-cigarettes, it's just a liquid form of nicotine. So the patients are still getting that nicotine fix, that high that they crave from the nicotine, because that's the most addicting part of the cigarettes. I think a lot of times people think with the e-cigarettes, you don't have as many chemicals or harmful byproducts as they do in a typical cigarette. We've had patients to try to quit smoking with using the e-cigarettes to kind of help wean them off. But the whole time of when you're inducing smoke, toxins, nicotine into your lungs, you cause the risk of damaging those airways and then compromising your breathing. On the slide, it just shows you like the components of an e-cigarette. Generally, some of the e-cigarettes will have like a lighted end that when they inhale, it lights up, so it kind of simulates a cigarette itself. The battery, then you have your chamber that holds the liquid nicotine. And then as they draw in, it heats it up, so you're allowed to have that vape come in and out. At the bottom of the screen, it tells you 3 major chemicals that are in those electronic cigarettes. And all of those can be toxic to the body, so you can still cause a lot of lung damage, even with the e-cigarettes.
I think another one of the risks to point out is that you really don't know what you're getting with them. They're not regulated by the FDA, so a lot of times one brand could have a lot of nicotine as opposed to another one could have a lower amount of nicotine in them. And another thing that we're seeing is there's a lot of new trends that are occurring So for instance, there's this new dripping vaping method where people are putting the e-liquid from the e-cigarette onto the hot coil directly. And so that's actually causing all those chemicals to be more toxic to your body, and it's also increasing the temperature of the e-cigarette, which increases the likelihood of the device actually exploding.
So as they're doing that, one of the things I've seen, or well, read about, when they're doing the dripping on those coils, and it heats up, so then it turns to the liquids. So then it puts different metals into people's system. So have you seen that as well?
So again, and any time you do that, you're inducing that toxin or the metals into your lungs.
So metals such as aluminum and cobalt and chromium into your system, and I don't think our bodies were meant for that. So that's just one of the dangers of vaping. The other thing is, do you often get so many people say that they stopped smoking and went to vaping?
I think there has been a trend with some of our older patients that they have been using e-cigarettes to kind of break them of the traditional cigarette smoking, and then they kind of wean off the e-cigarettes. Some people will go ahead and wean off the e-cigarettes, and then they're just a non-smoker from that point on. But some of them, they enjoy the e-cigarettes. They feel like it's less toxic, it would do less damage than the traditional cigarettes. So there's a big controversy, I think, out there about, is it safe or not safe? Some people have successfully weaned themselves off of cigarettes by using the e-cigarettes, but there's still dangers in the e-cigarettes, I think.
I think also a lot of people do dual usage, so they'll use a conventional cigarette as well as an e-cigarette, and actually 58% of e-cigarette users are individuals who are also using just regular conventional cigarettes as well.
So do you believe in their minds, they're thinking that's cutting back, so I'm not smoking a pack a day, I have a half a pack, and then I have the e-cigarette? Is that a possibility?
I think so. I think a lot of people don't realize that the e-cigarette still contains nicotine and very similar chemicals that we're seeing in conventional cigarettes, and 99% of e-cigarettes contain nicotine, and so I think that a lot of people don't find that to be true.
The other thing you just stated was there's no regulation. So you really have no idea what you're putting into your body.
Yeah, a lot of the vape shops are able to make their own e-liquids right there. Nothing's checked or regulated. They can say it has 0% nicotine, and really it's got 20% nicotine.
And then that would possibly, someone's like, well, let's go to this particular shop because they have more, or do you, and they have a powerful lobby. That because it's a lot of small businesses, so they've been really vocal on defending their right to have their vaping.
Right.
So we've seen that in the news.
Yes.
So where did a lot of things? What are the demographics of? Have you seen? Of
I think what I guess impresses me is just the young people that are very drawn to it. I think it gets advertised or commercialized.
The marketing vapes.
Of it is, to me, is kind of geared to the younger folks. I think you see a big population with our less than 18 or 18 to 24-year-olds. And I think the biggest appeal for the kids is because, they may not say that they're vaping nicotine, but they have all the flavorings. They have tons of flavorings. So on your screen, you can see the demographics of it by the age group. 15% of our patients are less than 18 years of age. So I think that the marketing tool for this is really kind of geared to the younger folks. With 23% being 35 years or older, those are going to probably be our patients that maybe use traditional cigarettes, and now they're trying to say, well, I'm going to wean off of this. So, but I think the flavoring is the biggest draw for the kids.
Well, the flavors sound wonderful.
Yeah.
Cotton candy, banana split.
Yeah. Even
chocolate, bubble gum, some of those. So it's just sounds appealing. Like, ooh, this sounds fun. Not necessarily looking at the possible harmful.
There's currently
side effects.
over almost 16,000 flavors that are on the market. And I think as far as the flavorings go, and like we said, the packaging and the marketing, a lot of times the packaging can look similar to a food product or a candy item. So immediately that child can associate, something that's super harmful with something that's just, an after-school snack.
And some of the controversy has been because those flavors sound so inviting, correct?
Absolutely. And again, with the marketing, a lot of times if you see advertisements, it's usually, it looks like young, healthy people having fun and enjoying life. And I think that really tends to lure in youth, and it's easy for them to conceal what's in their product. 63% of people who are using the Juul don't even know that it contains nicotine.
And the Juul has been, I know it's been in the news. Some of their marketing tactics have been questionable, but they
Absolutely.
have probably the most, or the flavors possibly, or how's that work?
The Juul currently has about 3 to 4 flavors on the market, and they have taken some of those out of stores because they were easy for youth to have access to, and they've placed them to where they're available strictly online.
And that's another thing. So are there any requirements, or are we seeing people are buying a lot more, not necessarily in vapes, but online stores as well?
Absolutely. Children getting a hold of their parents' Amazon accounts, and just hitting a button online that says, "Yeah, sure, I'm 18."
With the, what are some things that parents can do to?
I think what the parents is just to have those good conversations with their children, educate themselves. I know like American Heart Association, the American Lung Association has tips out there for parents to start the conversation. And even the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, has websites and tips and tricks for parents to begin these conversations, to discuss the hazards. And it really doesn't have to be a one and done conversation. I think that a lot of times, probably our kids listen to us a little bit more than we think they're listening to us. But I think it's just that repetitive talking to them and opening up those lines of communications, sharing the concerns, the dangers, and just having those open, honest conversations.
Because almost like technology in certain instances, the kids knew all about vaping way before the parents. And so going to those type of resources could help educate the parents, because now it's kind of, they're playing catch up. They are seeing the different stories and the harmful side effects that the different people are experiencing. So the basic thing is for them to read up on it. Now, I know that you work with a lot of schools. Have you had questions or had any requests about coming out to speak about vaping or the dangers, or is this all about tobacco?
So primarily the school's concerns right now aren't going to be tobacco. It's going to be the e-cigarettes and the Juuls. We're fortunate enough that all of our schools in Wayne County do have a tobacco-free grounds policy that does include e-cigarettes. And currently I go into the schools, educate the kids, and a lot of times, they're not even realizing, they're like, that has nicotine? I had no idea. But I think that it's important for the teachers and the parents to be educated on what those devices actually look like, to research how they look and how they appear, because like we've seen with the Juul, it looks like a USB device. They can look like highlighters. They have all kinds of crazy looks.
So on the slide, we're showing the some of the various sizes and what they look like. And that's interesting. Because I didn't realize one looked like a USB card. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah.
So very, you can hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the average person would think, oh, they're just doing their homework. They have something in their USB card and not realize that it's a smoking device.
There's also a new one that looks like the little Mios, you know, that you can squeeze into your water.
Oh, okay.
It looks just like that in shape. So there's all kinds of things.
So they continuously are changing their marketing
Yeah.
tips through there. The another thing, what do you see the most? I'm going to go back. I'm really curious on for respiratory. Have we seen anyone in our area that have struggled?
I think that, you know, most generally they're going to come in, they'll be short of breath, sometimes they'll have coughing episodes, they'll feel like they can't catch their breath. So, you know, a lot of times when people first come in, it could be, you know, they could be thinking they're having just like a respiratory infection, or until you kind of start talking to the patients. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is kind of getting to the underlying, you know, really what's going on, because sometimes they want to downplay it like, oh, you know, it's just probably a cold or something like that. But I don't know if we've seen a great deal yet. You know, one thing I think that's going to cause us to know what kind of really damage is being done is if they have like a pulmonary function testing, because that way we can get a picture of how well the air's getting in and out of their lungs, how well things are functioning in the pulmonary system. And I know that there's in the news now, there's a lot about the deaths and things happening. But I think that it's something that sometimes can sneak up on you. I know, like with traditional tobacco products, sometimes it takes years for people to start getting the symptoms. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times the damage is done and they're not even really aware of it. I would have to talk to the staff and see really what's been going on in ER, but I think that that's one of the biggest issues, is because we kind of downplay it, and it takes sometimes years for damage to really rear up and show itself. So,
And just like Candace had said, that people don't often know that oh, I just did a little something, not realizing that they might have done a little something, but it had just a higher percentage of nicotine than they ever fathomed that it could possibly have.
yeah. And I think another concern that we have with nicotine being almost like a poison, because with the liquid nicotine, it's such a higher concentration of nicotine. And sometimes you'll get the smaller children that can get into the little vials, they can spill. Even the liquid nicotine just getting on their skin, the skin will absorb that nicotine. And it can actually cause almost like a poisoning to them. Or they could, if they try to drink it, again, it's going to be poisonous to them, because that liquid nicotine has such a higher concentration than what you would do if you were vaping. So I think there are some other dangers that could be around too. So again, I think parents being aware of what their kids are doing and having these open conversations, but educating themselves first before they start talking to the children.
Another thing, I know that the laws are we're behind on regulating the laws regarding vaping, but I know that some places it's just you can't smoke in a car with small children. Are there rules like that for vaping? Or do we know?
Currently, I have not heard of any that have came out like that. I know that several states have banned the sale of e-cigarettes for 6 months because they're seeing it on the rise with youth, but I haven't heard of anything regarding them being able to not smoke with children in the car.
And I think that's just leading up to like the secondhand smoke. I mean, I think that's why a lot of regulations have been that you don't want to smoke in a closed, confined car when you have smaller children in the back seat, because they're going to be inhaling all that exhaled smoke as well. And I think that you still have to be mindful of secondhand smoke, even with, I guess you would call it secondhand vaping.
Right.
If you're vaping in your car and you have small children in the back seat, they're going to be inhaling that vape just as much as, you know, as anybody else, because they're in that confined area with you. So it still has to be used with caution, I think.
So once again, I could see a person who was saying, well, I'm vaping bubble gum or the chocolate, so it's not going to harm my child. So I could see that the same circle that you would see. For adults who vape, Is there a different alternative for
want-
nicotine
Since you're
addiction?
the tobacco.
I don't think there's a healthy alternative. I think that having that conversation with a primary care physician and knowing what resources are out there, what medications could assist them with, kicking the habit, or if there's any type of patches or things like that sort that they could try to help them in their cessation journey.
And that also brings up a point. I'm sure that a lot of physicians are depending on both of your information on contributing, because this is something that's relatively new, but it has a health effect. So,
Yeah. And I think it's just more of us even keeping ourselves educated and trying to stay up on the latest trends. I know a lot of our references sites of like the CDC, the Disease Center, American Heart, and a lot of those websites update their information almost weekly as more and more things come out regarding vaping and e-cigarettes. So it's something we still have to continue to re-educate and keep up on the newest and latest trends. And it's just a team effort. I mean, with respiratory, with the smoking cessation, the doctors, the patients, the nurses, it's really a team effort to help our patients. We have COPD education that we do at the hospital. We try to introduce some of these things and concerns with our patients at Reid. But it all comes down to education and having conversations with one another to talk to about things that's going on.
and just a little off of the vaping, but with the education, just with smoking in general, do you work with patients while they're in the hospital, just to give them tobacco cessation information?
I currently do not. When we kind of switch to Epic, there's a printout that gets printed with information about resources, the Indiana Tobacco Quit line, to be able to give those patients something to go back on.
So, but just to let the community know that people are offered cessation information while they're at the hospital. So it's
Yes, absolutely. And with that, Reid does offer a freedom from smoking class periodically throughout the year. We have a member on our team in the wellness department that's been certified by the American Lung Association to teach that. And then also the resource that I typically use the most is the Indiana Tobacco Quit line. And by calling 1-800-QUIT-NOW, anyone can get help 24/7, totally free. If they're on Medicare, Medicaid, or they're uninsured, then they're able to get patches or gum for free.
oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's a good note for
Yeah,
the community
absolutely.
to realize. So it's just the 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
Yes. Yep.
So does that apply for people who have been vaping? And they,
Yes, it does. They
okay.
can assist vaping, and also they can assist youth that are ages 13 and older.
Okay, that's good to know. But back on just the notice of it's just so appealing to youth. I'm just real curious on that, and I guess that marketing was done just that way. And we might not see some of the results of that as you were saying, for years to come, since people have become comfortable doing that.
Well, it kind of reminds me back, about World War II era, back in the late 40s, early 50s. Smoking became a very popular thing to do. I mean, if you watch some of the older television shows, you have your actresses smoking on the TV shows. It was marketed very well to be appealing, to be the thing to do. It was the cool thing to do. And I think that now in today's age, we've done the same thing with the vaping. We've made it appealing. We've made it intriguing, saying, hey, this is the thing to do, especially with the flavorings. I mean, we showed we have like root beer floats, we have cake batter, we have cookies, and we make it appealing. We make it feel like it's candy for our kids. And I think that's really what draws them in.
I think another thing with that, and like you said, in today's era, we have social media, which that brings to light a whole new thing for teenagers these days. All kinds of advertising, you know, reposts of Snapchat of kids vaping in school, and all kinds of things like that on
Forgot
Twitter
about
and
the entire
Facebook.
social
Yeah.
media.
That brings a whole new world in.
So it's been your favorite celebrity is vaping, and you want to be cool as well.
Yeah.
So you'll use what they're using. So I could see that going. So I want some more likes,
Yeah.
and to move to that arena.
Yeah, absolutely.
The so it's been a really interesting conversation, and but I want to make sure the audience knows where they could get help. So aside from the Quit line, what are our local resources? Who do they call?
They could contact me at Reid Health, and my number is going to be 935-8997, and I can provide resources to the Quit line and help with getting that set up, as well as give more information for Reid's Freedom from Smoking class. That class is in person, and it meets once a week.
Great. And we thank you both for joining us today, and we thank you for all your input. I learned a lot, and we hope the audience did. And we want to thank you for joining us today on Reid Beside You.